Welcome to Show, Don't Tell, a podcast by TelScreen's team of Wes Harris and Kent Harris sharing their stories of being in the eye care industry in their unique, punny style with facilitator Christy. Welcome, everybody, to the TelScreen podcast of Show, Don't Tell with Kent Harris and Wes Harris. And I am the facilitator, Christy, who happens to be their marketing person. Welcome to this episode. Hi, guys.
Hey, Christy. Thanks for that warm introduction. And thank you, everyone who's listening out there.
Both of you.
We've already been talking, but we were joking. The technology that we have, we updated even more. So that way, as we have a guest at the table that was extra, we have an extra mic ready anytime somebody wants to join us at the table.
If you're a struggling songwriter and would like to perform, please send us a note at www.TelScreen.com.
Yeah, this is Louisville, not Nashville.
Oh.
Close enough.
If you're a struggling songwriter working at UPS, stop by.
That is definitely more like it. So a few little notes as you're listening to this podcast. We are on TelScreen.com. You can find us in the podcast section or the blog category. You can also find us on your favorite streaming channels. And you can find that by clicking through the podcast and go to, because we're on Spotify even, Google Podcasts, iTunes.
We hit the big time.
Yeah, we're there. You just have to pick your favorite and then, of course, subscribe. That way you'll know when we upload new episodes. And right now we're monthly because it keeps it at a good pace for all of us.
Is there a podcast for Dr. Icy Spots on Spotify? I would think that would be.
Honestly, I'm pretty sure that might be a thing. It might be a thing.
We'll look for it.
If it's not, somebody that listens to this, they're going to be like, oh my God, that's genius. Let's do it.
There are a lot of ODs that do have podcasts. So
yes.
Maybe we can hook up with them.
Right.
I would love to do a joint episode podcast.
What do you call that when you've got like two podcasts together? Is there a plural for is it podscast or?
Podcasts.
Or is it?
Podcats. We're Kentucky people.
I know you're wondering, like, it's not just octopi. It's
right. Podcast. Shut your pie hole. Okay, we'll get back on topic.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Wrangle it back in. TelScreen.com is where you can find all the information about everything TelScreen and what you guys do and provide for the world, which is awesome. But the podcast is actually to get more out of what you guys have always talked to your people about and all of the insights that you guys have about not just technology, but the business in general and the business of
optometry and ophthalmology.
That's right. So, which has always become one of my favorite things to learn about because there's so much, especially when we had your dad, Pat, on in the last episode. He knows a lot.
He's done a lot.
He's done a lot.
He's seen a lot.
And he shares a lot. So it's really...
And he used to be a farmer.
He used to be a farmer. And so during this episode, at some point, we will share another story with Pat.
I need to be thinking.
No, we've got some. Oh, we got some of Pat.
Okay.
We have Pat in the can.
I'm turning my mic off now.
I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
That's too funny. So, yeah, because Pat's a great storyteller, but he also is extremely informational, and it's stuff that I've learned. So, as our listenership grows, our audience grows, we're going to have everybody from the veteran doctors out there who have known you guys for years, and they love to listen because they like to talk with you guys. But you're also going to have those people who are brand new, like your college students. They're like, ooh, these guys have a podcast. That's cool.
New grads, second-year students who are just now getting into the meat of it after they've been through basic sciences and are ready to see patients next year.
They wish they could learn as much as Pat already knows, like to start like that. So being able to have all of that in these episodes is energizing for me, but it also helps with our marketing. So I know what to say. Let's make no mistake. It's been very helpful.
So this week I had a call from a doctor who's a longtime customer, bought his gold iris.
First-time listener.
Time for the spit take.
Well, I just took a drink of water. Come on now.
But his gold system from 2004
So let's add that up. 2004, we're in 21.
17 years old.
17-year-old machine. Yeah. Okay.
So computer equipment, typically, we tell people to expect a lifetime of 5 to 7 years. In the old days, the IT guys at Bell Labs would say, every 3 years you're getting a new computer. And, every 3 seems a little bit of a short cycle. But back then, the pace of change was such that things were 10 times faster in 3 years. So maybe that made sense.
More like 100 times in the 80s and 90s. Huge accelerations. 6 months was a lifetime back then. So now the 3 to 5 has sort of shifted to 5 to 7.
Yeah. And so 17 is a little bit longer than 5 to 7.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. And, he thought maybe he needed a new cable. Well, yeah, technology's moved on since then. I don't know. We probably could still make the cable, but should we? The opportunities to, new computing hardware, you're going from a 2004 machine to a 2021 machine. That's going to be a lot faster. Getting rid of Windows 2000, probably a good thing to do right about now. It's been 20 years. Okay. Getting to Windows 10 and modern operating system and patches and, HIPAA compliance and security, all those things. But then there's also the opportunity to go to the next generation of camera. From the gold camera to the platinum camera was about a 10-fold increase in color and spatial resolution. From the platinum camera to the diamond camera is another 3.3-fold increase just in spatial resolution. So you're 33 times better if you go from gold to diamond.
So, okay, give me, the person who has, needs I need a visual. Mm-hmm. Give me an idea of what that would be like in an analogy of some sort.
All right. Getting from gold to platinum is like finally going from the tiny, the worst video quality, the B-movie video quality to standard def television, perhaps.
Yeah. It's like the 13-inch black and white that my grandparents had to the 17-inch color TV that we had in the 70s, early 70s. It's like going from tiny black and white to a little bit bigger color.
And that's gold to platinum.
That's from like gold to platinum.
And so platinum to diamond is
diamond, it's like going to HD. Now
it's like going to 4K.
Right.
With surround sound. Yeah. If these things came with sound, which they don't.
Yeah, but that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
You could be podcasting from your exam room when you have that special patient.
Well, especially for the doctor, if the doctor put it on and certain music would indicate certain things. Think about it. If there's fog on the eye, it's a mysterious background noise.
That would be great. Now the patient's sitting there in the chair listening. What do I have? Oh no, I've got a foreign body.
Close encounters of the third kind.
Okay, I'm sorry. That was I digress.
No, I think that's a great new product idea. We can have audio sound effects for the doctor to hit, just like the shows that do all the radio sound effects to make their points when they're talking about. I was going to mention Jim Cramer because his show is always Mad Money. And he hits all those sound effects.
Yeah, the sound effects. Or let's say they come back in for that checkup and they do another picture and the patient has done all the things that they're supposed to do and they win a gold star. Start applauding.
Just whatever we do, we can't have the cash register sound. That's not good.
Or the patient hasn't done what they're supposed to do and you get the gong show sound.
Exactly. Okay. So
anyway, back to this doctor.
Yeah.
Eventually decided that he just wanted to upgrade. And that's okay.
Just the computing hardware.
Just the computing hardware, right. But that kind of reminded me of my mom. My mom's on the frugal side. Maybe that's an understatement. But her mother was the head of household at the age of 9 when my mom's grandmother passed away, giving birth to my mom's uncle. And shortly after that, there was this small event called the Great Depression.
Just a small, minor, life-changing thing.
So imagine, being... Let's see. So 13 years old and the Great Depression happens and you're now trying to, fill your mom's shoes, food for the family, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the younger children and keeping the family going while also still completing an 8th grade education. Obviously, she had to reuse and recycle everything. A scrap of worn out clothing became a cleaning rag. And after it became a cleaning rag, you wash it enough times that you can read a newspaper through it. Well, you still got some fiber there. What can we use that for?
It becomes more like a cheesecloth, or you do it something outside with it. Yeah.
Or you pull it apart for thread and you fix other stuff with it. Or you use it to patch something.
So everything was reused. Everything was run all the way down to zero residual value. Newspapers were saved in case you needed insulation in a cold winter or something to start a fire with.
Letters that you received, you steamed open the envelope, folded the envelope inside out, and then you had another envelope to use.
Wow. And I did know about the flower company that did their bags in designs because they learned that the women were making dresses for their daughters.
Taking the burlap and making clothes out of it.
Yep.
So my mom was definitely on the frugal side. In fact, she's so frugal, she saves time on the microwave. If you've ever cooked something and you hit the add a minute and then you stop it with 20 seconds left because 40 seconds was all it really needed, she would save that 20 seconds on the microwave. I'd walk in trying to figure out what time it is, and I'd see a flashing 20. And I'm like, what time is it? I don't know. But there's 20 seconds left in case you need to reheat something for just a little bit.
I thought that was a commentary on the current sport game going on. Like it's in the fourth quarter and there's 20 seconds left.
No, that was time saved on the microwave.
Wow.
Didn't even push the clear or cancel button to get it back to the clock. It was, saving that time.
Wow.
So I think there maybe are some doctors who are who are saving that 20 seconds just in case when maybe a new system and a new camera would vault them to a higher capability and bring new value to their patients.
So, gosh, I mean, this is you don't get these very often, though. You don't get these calls that often, do you?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to remember how long ago it was that I got the call from the doc in Michigan that is still running a system on Windows NT and is 21 years old and because it still worked. And I don't know how much he paid his IT guy.
We did talk about this one.
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning, but it may have been maybe a couple of years ago. But I mean, it happens. I still get plenty of calls though from people with 10-year-old systems who are in that same thing. They don't even think about replacing it or upgrading it unless it breaks because we just run everything until it breaks. Well, much like your car, sometimes that's a good strategy, sometimes that's not a good strategy. And we talked about the purpose of the infinite imaging plan.
I was just thinking about that.
Was to try and get out of the mode of let's wait until we catastrophically break down, and instead let's be more preventative on a reasonable and economical schedule. I mean, I think the natural resistance everyone has to that is, well, how do I know that this company isn't just trading things out at the most aggressive schedule or costing me more money doing this?
Sure.
And they don't trust that, hey, maybe someone's done some research. Interesting thing, I used to kind of be along that. I'm my mother's son. I'm also a little on the frugal side. And so we were looking at, back when we were contemplating building our own machines versus purchasing from a Dell or HP or at the time Gateway when they were a separate company. And we looked at, purchasing a hard drive and getting reliable hard drives. Well, back when Google was growing leaps and bounds, they studied it. And they did hard drives spinning hard drive media, running in data centers 24/7, 365, temperature controlled, and looked at what was the failure rate of different drives and the different types of models and brands and across all of them to find out, hey, is this cheaper hard drive really cheaper in the long run? Or is it just going to fail earlier? And their results were really surprising. Their average lifetime of a hard drive in those conditions, 6 months to 18 months was the variability, and the average was about 12 months. Well, if you look at that kind of conditions a year, that conditions 24/7, that's about 3 times, you're using it at least 3 times less per day because you're doing 8 hours a day for a typical, if you're actively used. And it's really less than that because this was actually actively used in terms of constantly serving data, whereas most people's hard drives are idle in their system and maybe have a 10 to 20% duty cycle of how much they're actually used during the time that they're actually on. So during the 8 hours that you're using it, when you factor that in, you factor in most people aren't open 7 days a week, they're 5 days a week, And you look at all those factors, suddenly you start to come up with that 5 to 7 year lifetime on a hard drive. Somewhere around year 6, you start to see more hard drive failures. It's just what you see. And now you know why. It's like, oh. And yeah, you can invest in the 18-month hard drive, and there's a cost associated with it. And those 18-month drives under
Google
constant
conditions.
use,
Under the Google
under
conditions.
the Google conditions, will probably get you closer to 7 years or maybe even 8. But they're probably not going to make 10. And, there may be a few lucky ones out there that make 10 and make 15. But, if it breaks and you lose everything and your backup wasn't checked and you didn't have that saved, now you've just created a real nightmare for yourself. Because if you've billed for these photos and if the insurance company wants to audit you and you don't have your data anymore, they're going to say, hey, you don't get to keep that money.
You owe me 100% of your imaging revenue for the last 6 months. And now we're going to go back 6 months before that, and they're going to keep rolling back their audit window until they've either gone back as far as they're legally allowed to, or until they found a spot at which you actually have images.
So I had a Dodge Dakota at one time.
Should I comfort you, or are you happy about that decision?
I loved that truck. And I continue to impress so many people because I ran that truck until it died.
How many 100,000 miles?
395,000 miles.
It could be a TelScreen van.
It's not dented. It finally had, and I swear, the guys who did, I had them do like a transmission flush and an oil change. And I firmly believe that when that happened, it just decided something went wrong. I drove from Louisville to Nashville, where my mom lives, and near there. And on almost to her house, it just said, nope.
They flushed out the dirt that was holding it together.
Must have. Something had gone wrong. It was a transmission issue, and it's still in my mom's backyard. Yeah, it's in the barn lot kind of thing. So it's not like a statue in the front.
Not a front yard cinder blocks kind of thing.
No, it's on the back 40. Yeah.
But you probably maintained that truck pretty well to get 300,000 miles out of it. In terms of your oil changes and all the engine.
But to the point you guys are making about this, even just the computer system, first of all, the Dodge Dakota, obviously, from all the shock and awe that I've gotten over the years, was not made to last that long. It's got a lifespan to it. 200 would have been the lifespan, and I pushed it to 395. Go me. Yay. Until it didn't work anymore. But the cost of going back to having it fixed so that it would continue to run 395,000 miles was probably not worth it when you go back and you look at the cost factor of it. So the same concept of, the imaging system is a big purchase for a business, but after the typical lifespan of it, the cost for upkeep, like you guys at least have something to help buffer that now to extend the life. But even so, there comes a point whenever you guys have to look at something and go, man, I just don't know about this.
Well, we still support our cameras from 2004. And that's been.
But still, how do you support Windows operating systems from
We don't support old Windows. We can't do anything there. But in terms of taking a camera from 2004 or even 1999, you can still plug that into our new system. So we maintained an interface.
We still have some backward compatibility for old, older camera hardware. And I think that is there because that kind of backward compatibility doesn't add a lot of cost to a system. You can do that relatively efficiently.
If you plan it at the start of the project, not at the end.
Yeah, if you know that you have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly does put some limitations on us to support older hardware. The type of computer you have to buy, you can't just pick any of them. You can't just get this all in one machine and I got one laying around here, let me use it. Your chances of that working are pretty small, but there's some chance that you'll have all the required features that are needed. But part of that's the system engineering, and that's another story of trying to explain that, a computer is not a commodity like fruit. You can't just go to the store and buy an apple or a banana.
No. I can buy apples wrong
You-
because there's too many varieties.
but you can't go and just get, red grapes and expect that the batch of red grapes that I got are going to support, the latest flavor palette for the latest, I don't know, wine and cheese party that you're going to. But how's that analogy on the fly?
That's a pretty bad analogy. Next.
Yeah.
Let's try that
So,
again.
yeah, so buying computers for an application, there's some engineering that goes into that.
And
And they're not
computer is not an
commodities.
interchangeable part just automatically. There are things that are special about each and every model out there, and limitations that you may or may not know are limitations until you try to make it do something that it was not designed to do exactly.
You guys brought up Gateway. Is that even still a...
They were bought by E-Machines, I think, and then they're Walmart. I think Walmart carries the derivative company of them now. It's the last I remember seeing them.
The cow box has been
Oh,
gone
yeah.
for a long time.
We had a ton of cow boxes there. In fact, Pat's department at the University of Louisville was one of the early Gateway customers in 1984. I think they bought 20 machines then when Gateway was just starting.
Wow. IMAX, right? Did you guys ever use those, the colorful box
No.
things?
No.
Not designed for this.
Not designed for expandability, not designed for anything other than the Apple-approved accessories. If Apple didn't design it, it didn't plug in, was basically...
I mean, that's still the way, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, Apple has their ecosystem.
They do have an ecosystem.
And they're trying to claim that that's a unique value and that they shouldn't be brought up on antitrust charges, et cetera. Or, yes. But they have a legitimate point in the sense that when you design the entire ecosystem to work a certain way and you have a perimeter fence designed to keep bad actors out and you take some corporate responsibility for reviewing applications in your app store, there's a value there. And I can see why some users prefer the Apple ecosystem because they know what to expect from any app that they find in the Apple App Store.
They can enforce their own standards and constraints, just, different from a group conformance to standards. I mean, we all are subject to pressure to conform to our environment and our society. Well, the computer industry is no different. Back in the maverick days in the 60s when semiconductors just were invented, we just had practical applications of taking these little solid state transistors and making calculators out of them, and then little computer kits. And there was a huge race to the personal computer revolution. Who could make the best kit? Texas Instruments had one. All these little players you've never heard of, had a kit for the do-it-yourself enthusiast. You can make your own computer, and Tandy, Radio Shack, TRS-80s, all of that. There were no standards yet on processors, instruction sets, operating system code. None of that.
What? It was the wild, wild west of the computer
That was the wild, wild west of the computer age. And Bill Gates was the visionary, one of the visionaries who said, "Oh, gee, if Microsoft can lock in a standard operating system, DOS, disk operating system, if we can lock that in and license that to anybody who makes computers, so we don't care who's making the hardware, but we have the software, and that way we can grow the user base of people who want to use computers, because now you don't have to train it's just like you learning a new piece of a new
podcast
equipment. If you have an interface you're used to and you know what dials do and switches do, you can operate any equipment that uses dials and switches. Well, computers were no different. If you know the commands for DOS, you could run any computer that ran DOS. But if you tried to run on a Wang and we're doing OS whatever 9, what was that, CPM, you'd be lost. You're like, I don't know.
If you guys could only see my face right now, I have no idea what that was.
Think 10-inch floppy disks.
Oh my God.
It gets worse.
Oh, wow. So all of this change of technology over the years, and so fast forward to now, you guys still support some of this old stuff.
Well, the thing is, the standards are your friend, because standards allow multiple people to work together to solve a common problem. And for computers, the standards about operating systems and the standards of, well, if you lay your case out this way and your motherboard is this size and it supports this connectors, anybody can make a case for your computer, and it's supported.
And any card that plugs into the motherboard will fit in the case if you adhere to the standards.
Yeah,
so
and
now you have interoperability across multiple manufacturers for multiple pieces of your computer.
And some small,
that gives you longevity.
And some small company somewhere can say, oh, let me design a special purpose card that's going to do really great at image processing or image acquisition. And we're going to design it to this bus standard so it'll fit, so that they can purchase whatever computer they want, but they can plug our card in and we'll supply the software to talk to it. And that's the product they can deliver. So it allows more innovation. But every time you do that, that's none of that level of detail isn't specified in the standard. So now you're customizing and you're making special purpose hardware from standard components. And so the win for everybody who's using this equipment is, well, gee, if the company that's doing this really special, innovative thing can use standard components, their cost can be lower and they can pass that savings on to you. And instead of an imaging system costing $500,000, it can be 20 or less.
And the other win is once you have the standardization, then it does allow us to take the old camera, have a standard interface, bring it into a new computer. So you can keep your old camera and your old optics if you want, and just replace the computing hardware and operating system and
now you can have your new software. Yeah,
and database.
You can get the modernizations that have happened on some of the components. You can come into and have the latest features on.
But you can do that at about half the cost of a new system instead of having to throw away your old stuff and start over.
Yeah.
So
well, and also to your point about HIPAA, all of these, you need to keep that software component part up to date. So
it's basically anything that's on a network, anything that's connected. So you can have a non-compliant operating system on a standalone box that sits in the corner and does its own thing and doesn't talk to anybody else. As soon as you put it on your network, then there's a problem.
Gotcha.
And it's
now it's a risk.
Well, it's a regulatory risk. It's no problem as long as no one finds out about it.
Yeah. But it becomes a potential security risk if a breach happens in such a way that they can access that equipment or use that equipment to
get your patient list and their social security numbers.
And, get access to your systems.
So you guys have no idea, but I'm sitting over here and you two know my love of superheroes and Wonder Woman especially. And so on the weekends, I will watch the old 1970s Wonder Woman TV show.
Linda Carter?
Yep. The computer that they used was an IRAC computer. And it was this little interface in the middle of a secure room. And they had to go through security to get into the room that was filled with these. There was a box on each wall that had the tape rolling.
That's right.
And so
we had those.
That's the latest in disk drive technology. That's magnetic tape on a wheel.
Because what makes it even funnier is anytime the computer was thinking, the lights would blink up on the screen and it would pan to each of those boxes and the tape would be rolling.
Mm-hmm. See, what was probably happening is they only had about 8 bytes of memory in that computer, and they were swapping those 8 bytes to tape to read in 8 different bytes to process those and then bring them back to tape and read in another 8 bytes. They were probably just tape churning.
Oh my gosh. So it cracks me up, but it also fascinates me that we've gone from that, because that was a legit thing back in the day, to I can send a rocket into space with my cell phone.
You can control a droid and take aerial photos of the entire country if you want.
All from this thing. Now, but this cell phone, speaking of what it's not designed for, is I know there's some systems out there, but not ideally. You wouldn't want to take a picture of your eyeball with your cell phone.
People do.
I mean, I know they do.
There's mission trips in which that's actually a handy feature. You can buy a set of lenses to use your cell phone to take eyeball photos.
But it wasn't really designed for that.
The phone wasn't designed for that.
It wasn't designed to be hooked up to a microscope, but people have done a workaround to make it work or get something that resembles working.
Well,
So-
you can get a picture, but
Right.
what does it take to get that picture? May be changing your phone settings. It may be holding, either getting a special holder or holding it with your hand a certain way and trying to hold it up over the eyepiece of a slit lamp. It may take 3 hands to hold the patient's lid, maneuver the slit lamp, and maneuver the phone, but it's possible to do. And it we actually, a lot of people say, well, you're an imaging company. Why would you encourage people to use their cell phones to take pictures? And my perspective is, get started with it. If you see the patient reaction to, they have some idea of what you're seeing in the slit lamp and they start to understand better, that just increases your perception of what's the value of having a real imaging system, where I don't have to get my phone out and put a holder on and remove an eyepiece and get an assistant to hold a lid or whatever.
Right.
It's always on, always ready. I tap my foot and I get the picture.
Yeah, the fact that people want to take images with their phone is the clue that imaging is really important to their practice, and they just don't realize how important it is. But the fact that they're willing to go through all that effort just to use their phone to get an image, I mean, that's the beginning of realization of waking up and saying, yeah, imaging is important. I really need this. And wow, what if I got a professional imaging system designed for this? What could I do then? And that's when we come in.
Yeah. Because, I understand using a cell phone in a pinch might work. But again, it's...
Well, you're not allowed to lose your cell phone. And you're not allowed to have any patient identifiable information unencrypted at rest.
To a network.
Well, it's already connected to a network as soon as it hits the cell tower. So no unencrypted patient information, no individual identifiable protected health information. There's a lot of requirements that are kind of being glossed over when that cell phone gets used.
Sure.
And some people can still get around it by, I don't use a cell phone. I use just a cell phone with Wi-Fi only, and I have a separate cell phone just for this that's hooked up and connected to the device. So it's really just a device where the cell phone is the camera and it's sitting there all the time.
But I wouldn't necessarily put this under the classification of being frugal. Though, like if we,
Yeah, and as soon as 4 of those walk away from your practice,
wow.
The frugal is gone.
Wow. Yeah, you don't think about that part, do you?
No.
Yeah. No. So I would, consider this like a backup plan, or like you said, mission trips or things like that. But to have like the official digital eye imaging system, the best that you can get for the patient eye care, that's going to have longevity and it's going to bring value to the patient as well as to your practice. That's going to be a lot more than this thing. But thinking it in terms of the business model and the plan and the bottom line, if you will.
You just have to keep pointing out the value that they've lost by not having the latest equipment. So how much slower
and for me,
is it?
I feel better knowing that I got the full lifetime out of the first one. So if you think about 5 to 7 is a normal lifetime and you can do an upgrade and get another 5 to 7, that says 10 to 14 is really a full lifetime out of a system. And at that point, maybe it's time to start the next system. And if a company delivered 10 to 14 years the first time, they can probably do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there is a difference between the upgrades and a new system.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you can keep, quote, upgrading. It's really, keep limping along with the camera and the optics that you had. And you're not joining the current time with your camera, but you are keeping your computer on the modern edge. So at least it's not the dinosaurs slowing down your network.
And that's why you guys started the infinite imaging.
Sure. And it's recognizing the fact, because part of the pricing of that plan, the magic of it is that we know the elements of our system because we designed it. So we know which elements really have an infinite lifetime. When you look at optics, there's optical elements can take a lot of abuse before degrading.
As long as you keep them away from salt water, salt environments that might corrode or take off coatings.
But in a typical office environment, your optics generally don't degrade. If they do, not fast at all. And 50 years, how long have you seen slit lamps out there?
Oh, yeah.
30 years.
50-year-old slit lamps with 50-year-old beam splitters.
That are still being used, and they still work fine,
Yeah.
And they do, because they're optical mechanical systems. As long as you keep the mechanics lubricated and cleaned and your office environment cleaned, you can get the performance just like they were new, pretty much. They just don't wear. They don't It's not like you're driving it and you've got gears grinding and wear and heat.
You've got a little wear. I mean,
the
wheels will wear some, and the gears and the up and down control, the elevator.
But it's a mechanical system, and the wear pattern on it is much less. In our system, we have an optical component. We have the camera, which is an electrical component. It's electrical optical component. And we have the computing system and all the computing electronics, which also have requirements of what network they're operating in and what environment that they have to play nice with.
But the good thing is with our new systems, we've gotten rid of the rotational media. So we have solid state drives now, no moving parts. That goes a long way toward increasing reliability because you don't have to worry about a hard drive no longer spinning anymore. A motor goes down.
Yeah,
you crashes the heads.
You lose one of the failure modes of hard drives and storage. Of course, you introduce some others, so that's that 5 to 7 year. It's kind of still maybe a wash in terms of, well, depending on how much you use it, how fast you access it. When do you get to the point where you can't access it anymore?
Right. Yeah, solid state memory does have its own limitations. You can't use it indefinitely. You can only read and write so many times. So,
but still, it's more reliable for those times. It's much less likely to break, just like early or in the middle. It's gonna get the right cycles. It's able to. But just recognizing that there are 3 main subsystems in our equipment and knowing the respective lifetimes of them, that allows us to maintain the equipment in a much more cost-effective manner and to pass that on to the customer so that that's they get in the maximum value they can get.
And they don't have to figure that out by themselves.
Right.
That's the thing I like about what I've learned from you guys is that you're there with them to help them figure this stuff out.
The idea that you shouldn't have to take a risk blindly on your own. You should be able to consult with somebody who has some statistical basis for how much of a risk is this really? How likely is it that bad things are going to happen in the next 6 months, 12 months versus should I expect this to last another 2, 3, 4 years? And if it does happen to fail, it's an early failure, not a usual failure. And that's, obviously sometimes does happen, but you're more likely to get full lifetime out of it if you know what a full lifetime is.
Right. And you guys are really great at helping your clients make better business decisions when they are not business-minded.
As a small company, I think that's one of our advantages is that we understand the challenges of being a small company and know that resources are not unlimited. The old phrase, money doesn't grow on trees.
Back to frugal. We recycle.
So we understand that, and we know that everything they spend money on has to add value to their organization. It's no different. I mean...
And there are some doctors that have also gotten MBAs either during their optometry school or shortly after, and are very much business-minded, and we've learned a lot from them as well. So, it's not just us teaching, it's also us learning from the doctors that have bought equipment from us.
And I'm hoping that we have those people on as guests sometime, too.
Well, as soon as we figure out how to hook up a telephone to a podcast.
I know, next step. We can always Zoom them in.
There you go.
We can totally work this out. So any last thoughts?
Well, it's travel season, so you'll see me in the greater Pacific Northwest area very soon, and then dropping into Vegas by parachute in an Elvis suit in time for Vision Expo West.
So by the time this episode gets launched, it'll probably, because if we follow the schedule, it'll be after Expo.
Okay.
So they may have already seen you in your Elvis outfit. Getting beat by the little old ladies in
the casinos.
Bridge games. Yeah.
Yeah. And then off to the other coast and then back to the middle and home for October.
Yeah. So we can do this again.
There you go.
That's right.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
We can have a new definition of frugal. Oh, you want me to give the definition? Oh,
we were hoping you wouldn't.
I was just waiting for some sort of joke because we haven't had a whole lot of them while we've recorded.
Trainee had his PhD actually from Indiana University, and we'll just use Dave. So he was one of them that came over for the experience on the ranch, the broadening experience of life. And so he came over, and happened to be a day when I was getting up the cattle, need to get up the cattle, and we were sorting because we're going to take some cattle to the stockyards to sell. And we had 3 wild cows that I wanted to get sorted out and loaded up, and they were just problem cows. There are problem cows, just like problem children, and because I wanted to take them off to sell. So we got them up very close to where we're about to get them to go through the last gate into the corral. One of these wild cows turned around and started pawing the ground. And had myself and the other trainees strung out kind of in a half circle trying to get them to go through the gate. And this cow started pawing the ground. So David, who's pretty good size, but he says, well, I think that cow's going to charge. What do I do? And I said, well, just stand your ground, turn around, pick up the biggest branch you can find. He picked up a branch. It was about 2 inches in diameter that was laying there. And I said, if that cow comes toward you, just whack him over the head. So David stood there, and his friend, who was also the New Jersey guy involved in the beak story, he's also standing there. He says to me, covers his eyes and says, I can't look. And so the cow rushes at Dave, and Dave doesn't move an inch. He stands there with this big 2-inch diameter log, about 4 feet long. And the cow at the last second buried a little bit to go past him. And David whacked him right over the head and broke off this log at about 4 inches up from his hand. Cow didn't hesitate, didn't stop or anything, kept on going. David looked over at me and says, I thought you said he'd stop. And I said, David, you've learned a very important lesson that applies in research as well as life. Don't believe everything you hear.
I heard a news story this morning in Pat's office that I had never heard before.
Did you put it on the list?
I have not put it on the list yet.
Is it short enough to share now? I don't think.
No. Pat's got to tell it.
It's a Pat story.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That means you guys have to come back and listen to another episode of Show Don't Tell with TelScreen guys, Kent Harris and Wes Harris, because the only way you're going to hear a story from Pat is if you listen to these podcasts. And with that,
thank you, everyone, for listening.
And good night.
thanks, everybody. Remember to follow us on your favorite channel. Go to TelScreen.com. You can find the episode there listed in the podcast section, or you can find us like on Spotify, Google. Go directly to that site, and then remember to click those bells and whistles and everything to get reminded for the next episode of Show Don't Tell. We hope you learned something new and laughed more than a little on this episode of Show Don't Tell. Let us know how well you enjoyed the show by leaving us a great review, and remember to subscribe to get notified of new episodes. Can't wait for a new episode to learn more about TelScreen? Give the guys a call at 502-515-1806 or visit our website at TelScreen.com. That's TelScreen.com.